start. Oh, here we go. Race McClure says, I feel like the Cardinals aren't getting a lot of love. I like what they did. That's a really good point. Let's start there then with the Cardinals, because I know they got Will Johnson there at 47 overall. Man, if you hit on Will Johnson, a corner, instinctual, made a lot of plays on the ball, more of a zone type of corner, but it's all about the health, right? The thing with Will Johnson, too, is at that spot, 47 overall, I don't think it's that much of a risk with his health, because even if he doesn't get to that second contract, maybe you get 4 really good years out of him and then the body gives. I mean, that's not a bad worst case scenario, because he's a top 10 talent in this defense with a coach who's going to know how to use him. I think Patrick Peterson made the pick too, which is kind of cool. To get him at 47 is one of the best values. So I think you're right, Race. We don't talk about the Cardinals much at all. The NFL's paying for fans to go to the draft, flying them in, doing all that. So I know they had some fans there. Were they paid by Roger? Are they real Cardinal fans? I don't know. If you were there, let me know. But Walter Nolan is quite an interesting prospect. So they get him at 16 overall in the first round. Bob had some great stuff from the scouts on Walter Nolan, the Mississippi interior rusher. I mean, he's been all over the place. He's been a mercenary since high school. So you kind of want, he's soft spoken, right? He doesn't say a hell of a lot. So it's not like he's this temperamental attitude issue, it seems. I don't think scouts described him as somebody who's going to be a malignant force in the locker room, but there is a sense of entitlement with him that you're going to get in a lot of these prospects in the day of NIL, transfer portal. But those 4 or 5 seconds that he'll give you in a play, dominant. I know there are scouts who loved him even more than Mason Graham. So if you feel like you've got the infrastructure, and I think they might have that, Calais Campbell's back in Arizona. Man, what a perfect mentor for somebody who needs that. And God, he's been in the league for 2 decades. He's seen it all. We sat down with him a couple of years ago. This is somebody who takes care of his body unlike any player I've ever been around. He's got a different specialist for every limb, every muscle, every body part that take care of him during the week. So to have that kind of veteran, I think for Walter Nolan, that's a best case scenario. I like Arizona's draft. It seems like they are a sneaky team that we don't think about much. We don't talk about much. And in that division with San Francisco, kind of in limbo. I mean, I guess they're going to pay Brock Purdy a ton of money. They've let a lot of good players go. They're trying to replenish the defense. Kyle Shanahan has his issues. I wouldn't be surprised if San Francisco took a step back. Do like the Rams. Interesting team in this draft as well. I think the Rams would have loved to have gotten a tight end, one of those top guys, and they weren't able, but they were able to get a first for next year, trading down with Atlanta, and they end up getting a tight end in the second. So we'll see how that division kind of shakes out. All right, let's start with the Packers. Let's start with the host city. They doubled up at receiver. I think it was a shock to many, and obviously love it. If you've got Jordan Love, you're paying him $55 million a year. You believe in him, clearly. We'll see how Matt LaFleur kind of handles the play calling. You heard from Leroy Butler on this podcast say, give him the keys, let go, let him handle more at the line of scrimmage. He was at his best in those 2-minute situations, up tempos. They've got to run the ball. And they were a different offense when Josh Jacobs was hammering away. I get it. At the same time, you're not paying somebody that much money to be a game manager. You've got to cut him loose. And I feel like this draft allows Matt LaFleur and the coaching staff to cut Jordan Love loose at the end of the season more. I mean, to get Matthew Golden, he was probably my favorite player in the entire draft. Absolutely love Matthew Golden. Off the field and impeccable with what coaches and scouts say about him. It seems like he was everything that you want in a locker room there at Texas. And, there were questions. How does his speed, which is incredible, how does it translate to the football field? I think he'll be just fine. I think this is somebody that is going to get separation, and that's what they need. Ideally, Christian Watson is going to give you that separation because that's what you drafted him for in the second round just a few years ago, but he can't stay healthy. So, yeah, I mean, it's It's too important. Jordan Love means too much to the franchise to just kind of sit and wait and hope for Christian Watson to get healthy and to sit and wait and hope that Dontavian Wicks doesn't drop every other ball thrown his way and to sit and wait and hope that Romeo Dobbs is going to be happy. And that's a very strange situation. Obviously, we kind of saw it there early last year. I believe that him and Matt LaFleur didn't see eye to eye on something. Somebody told me that Dobbs was sort of at fault, and obviously he just disappeared. They couldn't get in touch with him. They didn't know where he went. He ended up getting suspended that weekend. Returns, cooler heads prevail, kumbaya, everything is fine. And then he played the rest of the season. But whether it's all of that stuff, and there's a lot that we don't know clearly, or just the fact that he's going to be a free agent soon. Um, Obviously, if you can get Romeo Dobbs locked in, love his hands, dependable, big target, who knows if he's in your plans long term. So draft Matthew Golden, draft Savion Williams, somebody that you can move all over the field. Obviously, they have a Jaden Reed too. He's going to be a free agent soon as well, and strangely would just kind of disappear from the offense at times. So yeah, flood Jordan Love with weapons. And then, Anthony Belton's interesting. He was the lineman nicknamed Escalade, for those And One mixtape fans out there. That's the first thing I think of. Escalade out there, dribbling under his legs, throwing some no-look passes. He's got some red flags, but if you hit, that's a big body. Kind of goes back to what Ron Wolf used to tell Bob McGinn. It's a big man's game. You need size. And you also have some linemen that will be up for contracts as well. So you can't have enough of those. And then they doubled up at edge rushers. So I think that Green Bay had an excellent draft. Like we said, who knows which players are going to be good, which players are going to be bad. But just an electric atmosphere for Green Bay to finally draft a wide receiver in the first round for the first time since Javon Walker, more than 20 years ago. What a cool scene. And this is coming from somebody who just kind of hates the pop and circumstance of the NFL draft and paid fans and, hundreds of thousands of people celebrating players they've never heard of in their lives. It was still pretty cool there. Credit to Mark Murphy for building an entire town around Lambeau Field where there was only a Kmart and a gas station not too long ago. All right. Sorry for the ramble there. We do have some great entries. Zach at Substack. What's up, man? He's asking about the Patriots draft. Whew. I talked about it with Phil Perry for an hour and a half last week, so can refer to that pod as well. I love it. And it's easy to fall in love with these teams that have an infinite amount of money to spend in free agency and high draft capital. But I feel like every decision that the Patriots have made kind of speaks to everything that Mike Vrabel wants his team to be. Will Campbell is getting drafted, and the first thing he says, he's going to die for Drake May. I'd love to get a live shot of Drake May when Will Campbell's up there in tears saying he'll die for you. Like, do they know each other? Is Drake May saying, man, I don't even know you. You're going to die for me? I don't know. I wonder what his perspective is on that. Clearly, Will Campbell is a player that Vrabel would have done anything to acquire. Short of killing somebody. Just seemed like he was destined to get this LSU tackle. And Mike Vrabel's drafted tackles with the arm length concerns before. So he'll kind of know how to scheme him, how to use him. I think the fit's perfect. You just need tough, hard-nosed, mentally strong players, I think. Remember Mike Vrabel? It was kind of a viral video where he's standing in front of the entire team and kind of laying down the law of how they're going to run things day one of their off-season workouts. And now keep the cell phone in the duffel bag. You're paying attention. Like you can preach all this stuff all you want, but it's only going to work if guys are buying in and you're acquiring the correct players with that kind of temperament. Our readers got to know Carlton Davis. He fits that mold. They signed him. Milton Williams paid him a boatload of money, obviously, but I think he's wired the right way as well. And then you go through this draft. Travion Henderson seems like a perfect fit with Ramondre Stevenson. They're going to try to run the ball, support Drake May that way. I think that the Patriots, hey, Sonny, come on in, bud. Looks like my son did wake up from his nap. I think the Patriots had themselves an excellent draft. Kyle Williams as a receiver. I thought Buffalo might be kind of interested in the third round. As we learned from Brandon Beane, they did not view this as a strong wide receiver class whatsoever and wanted to, you know, help a defense that has been pretty terrible every January, which when you really think about it, it kind of starts and ends there. As much as you can make that Jordan Love Packers argument for the Packers or for the Bills and say they should just draft weapons for Josh Allen, it's the defense that is allowing a 55% TD rate in its last four playoff elimination games, or four playoff losses, 3 to Mahomes, 1 to Burrow. The defense needs help there. So I think the Bills, and we're going to obviously get into them more as we move along here and kind of analyze that hour-long conversation with Brandon Beane. But back to the Patriots, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to think the Patriots are the team that finishes second in the AFC East. It's that Josh Allen trajectory that they're hoping for. Show something to potential receivers, potential free agents, and then maybe a wide receiver does want to take on those higher taxes and that bad weather and be a part of something. All right, Kyle Beverly asks, are the Bengals fans overreacting to the Demetrius Knight Jr. pick? I wouldn't have taken him, but I don't think it's malpractice by the front office. Let's pull up the Bengals here, shall we? All right. Yeah, that's right. That's the linebacker they took out of South Carolina in the second round. I'm going to be honest. I don't know a hell of a lot about Demetrius Knight. So I'll talk about Shamar Stewart. I love the pick. I love taking a swing on size, athleticism, speed, projection. You don't know necessarily what you have in Shamar Stewart, but this is such a polar opposite draft pick than what they did with Myles Murphy a couple years back. And some of our readers may remember what these scouts said about Myles Murphy and about Clemson and why these D linemen, really, why a lot of guys from Clemson fail in the NFL. Scouts believe a lot of these players are coddled and that Dabo Swinney is less than sincere when he's talking to NFL teams and is kind of buttering them up and just doesn't really give them the real, doesn't really give them the raw and the good, the bad. Just doesn't do that with NFL teams. And it pisses off a lot of scouts in the NFL. Myles Murphy seems like a really conscientious guy, smart, intellectual, a good person, good presence in the locker room, which is what you'd like, I think, most of the time. But this is why you have to take some gambles at certain positions. Wide receiver, edge rusher, cornerback even. You kind of have to gamble on some personalities there. Give me somebody who's going to be violent, who wants to kick your ass. I know we bring him up a lot, but Vic Beasley, he had the one great season for the Falcons, and he disappeared. He wasn't wired that way. He didn't want to rip your head off in the NFL. Clemson guy, right? A lot of these Clemson players are like that. And so far, it hasn't worked out for Myles Murphy. Zach Taylor, in so many words, at the NFL owners' meetings, called this a do-or-die season for him. We'll see if Al Golden can get something out of him. Al Golden's not going to be afraid to play young players. That was kind of what hurt Lou Anarumo at the end there as DC, somebody who is one of the best defensive minds in football, just didn't want to play these young players. So Shamar Stewart at Texas A&M didn't put up crazy numbers on the field statistically, and it seemed like he didn't really see what was coming at times, didn't react fast enough. But that may be a product of the scheme, what Texas A&M was really trying to do. And you look at his numbers, we should obviously pull it up here from Bob's draft series, which is obviously live. If you're wanting to get the lowdown on anybody your favorite team drafted, just go to golongtd.com, check it out. Here is Shamar Stewart. So he was 270 at his pro day after weighing in at 267 at the combine, clocked 4.58 in the 40, even though he tweaked his hamstring, had a 40-inch vert, which was just below Landon Jackson. I think he had 40 and a half, which was number one among the edges, and a 10-foot, 11-inch broad jump. Quote, he looks incredible, but he's got like 5 sacks in his career, said a scout. It's a little bit all over the map, but the way he tested and the way he looked and ran, he's going in the first round. So you take the gamble there if you're Cincinnati. I think you have to take some gambles because you don't know what's going to happen with Trey Hendrickson. You got to give Trey Hendrickson help, even if you do have him. Maybe this is somebody that does benefit from one of the best pass rushers also on the field with him. Okay, let's just hit on a couple more teams here quick. I don't know if it's a good draft. I don't know if it's a bad draft, but for some reason the New Orleans Saints are pretty intriguing to me. They this is the highest they've drafted a quarterback as a franchise since Archie Manning, second overall in 1971. Tyler Shuck, you get him at 40th overall. Uh, I love what the Saints did. They didn't force it at quarterback. They didn't overdraft somebody at 9. They stood pat. They took Kelvin Banks Jr., who you got to love his size and his long term potential to be somebody that just starts for 10 plus years. This is a franchise that hasn't made the playoffs in 4 straight seasons, a franchise that believes they're a Super Bowl contender in perpetuity, year in and year out. They just push money down the road. They figure out we'll pay those bills eventually. We'll get to it. Don't worry. And I think they might still be thinking that way. Who knows? But I think this is the kind of draft where they do realize they have to plan ahead. And, you draft a lineman, you draft a quarterback who was in college for 7 years. I think he got 4 degrees, but he only really started that one season. It's not like you saw him play a ton, but he just may be the most pro-ready guy in the entire class. So you stayed patient. You got him at good value in the second round. I like that for a team that has been pretty rudderless. And Kellen Moore is the offensive coach. There's a lot of familiarity there with Shuck. We'll see how it works out. They could finish last in the division, but it's nice to see the organization at least kind of look to the future a little bit instead of kind of staring down at their feet while they're running. Keep the eyes up. Think about 2026, 2027 to turn this thing around. We'll see what happens there. And finally, what about the Pittsburgh Steelers? I suppose they're going to sign Aaron Rodgers at some point. He is the ultimate wild card for obvious reasons. But just sticking to the draft, Derek Harmon, probably one of my favorite picks. Such a heartbreaking story, obviously, where his mother tragically passes away shortly after he's selected. This is just such a Steelers pick though on the field. Somebody that you just know is going to plug into that D line, give you everything you possibly need. With Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, you add to a position of strength. You're in the AFC North. You've got to stop the Ravens ground game. You've got to somehow stop Cincinnati. He's going to help you in a spot where, a quarterback at 21, it could have just been a Kenny Pickett situation all over again, where you're kind of forcing the issue there. Caleb Johnson in the 3rd round, hell of a good value. I think at running back, it's a position of need. You saw what he did at Iowa. You pair him with Jalen Warren, and they didn't have a 2nd round pick. The DK Metcalf trade. That was your 2nd round pick if you're Pittsburgh. You paid a lot of money too. It's not like you're just giving up the draft capital. So, Harmon, Metcalf, Caleb Johnson. And is there any doubt at all that Jack Sawyer is a 12 sack linebacker at some point for the Steelers? I mean, you just see exactly how this thing's going to play out. He'll probably play special teams this year. Maybe has a part-time role. 2026, he's going to play in sub and give you a handful of snaps rushing the quarterback. And then by year 3, he'll be double-digit sack guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers because that's just how it goes. And maybe a really underrated pick that I love on a personal level is Carson Bruner, 7th round linebacker, Washington. Dad Mark Bruner talked to him for blood and guts. He's a scout for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So how cool is that? West Coast scout for the team. You're drafting your son at linebacker. He'll probably be another one of those Steeler linebackers at some point too. So yeah, I think the Steelers are in a really tough spot. They've waited around at the most important position in sports too long, and that's not ideal. I don't think signing Aaron Rodgers will be ideal either, but everything around the quarterback is pretty solid for the Steelers. Here's Sonny. Hey, bud, want to say hi? He's up from. Who did you like this draft, Sonny? Yeah. Okay, I think that's gonna do it for now. I'm sorry to cut this short. We've gotta get to lunch and take Sonny to the bathroom too. But let's pick this up again soon. Some really great questions. We've got a lot to get into. I want to talk about the Falcons trading up for James Pierce. want to get to Travis Hunter and the Jaguars, that kind of philosophy from James Gladstone to go for it versus the Browns, where you accumulate as many picks as you can, as many darts that you can throw on the board and hope for the best. Maybe that's the best way to go about it. Eric DeCosta, Ravens GM, just had a really interesting interview, basically saying in so many words, teams don't know who's going to be good, who's going to be bad. So get as many draft picks as you can and hope for the best. I suppose he would know a hell of a lot more than me, but I still like the other route. I love the Jaguars. Valuing Travis Hunter as a generational player and getting that player. Same thing with the Falcons. You need edges. You need to get after the quarterback. It's something you haven't been able to do in forever. Your jobs are on the line. You know what? Take Jalen Walker, trade up for James Pierce. Pierce comes with all sorts of red flags. I don't care. You've got to do it. You've got to get after the quarterback one way or another. Everything's at goalongtd.com, including the Q&A with Brandon Beane, Buffalo Bills general manager, that is live. And he was honest, as always, on everything when it comes to building up a defense that has not performed well in January, when it comes to the team's top 4 wide receivers, Josh Allen, James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman. Everything is discussed with Brandon Beane. He's incredibly transparent. We can discuss and debate that through the offseason, I'm sure. And thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed. We're completely powered by you. And hey, that's how we're able to keep this thing going 5 years strong. Thank you so much, everyone. I think we got to talk about the New York Giants because that was a story that we had the day of the draft, and Joe Prano, he joined for a live as well. They needed to nail this draft. Absolutely had to have it. Had to kind of sell a direction, I think, to the Mara family and really to the entire fan base with what is this team going to look like, not just in 2025 with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. What's it going to look like in 26, 27, 28? And that challenge really for Joe Schoen and Brian Dable was, do you force quarterback early to make sure you get your guy? Or do you take the obvious player, Abdul Carter, and then hold, and get your guy later in the first round? I thought they handled that masterfully. Just a great job by the entire front office for the Giants. That's been really under fire for a while now to get the edge rusher out of Penn State, Abdul Carter, who's got the balls to ask Lawrence Taylor for his number. Hey, whatever you think, hand it to him. And then to get Jackson Dart later in the first round. This is a quarterback that they're really familiar with. If you really think about it too, Brian Dable, one of his mentors, I believe, is Charlie Weiss. Charlie Weiss's son is on the staff at Ole Miss. They've got some intimate knowledge with Jackson Dart. They've been on these quarterbacks a very long time. It was just a matter of who do they like? Who do they not like? If the reports are to be believed, which I 100% buy into, Shedeur Sanders basically ruined any chance he had of getting drafted by the New York Giants with how he conducted himself with the Giants in those meetings. I mean, we've talked about it here. I think there are a lot of the day of NIL portal. It's all great. These guys should get paid. It's long overdue. But I think you saw this out of Caleb Williams a year ago too, to an extent. There's this feeling of, I'm not interviewing to play for you. You're interviewing me. You need to tell me why I should even, grace your presence. It sounds like Shedeur Sanders kind of conducted his interviews like that. He thought it was, a 180 reverse, that these teams he's sitting down with had to prove to them that they were worthy of his presence. And it backfired because you're willing to tolerate a lot of that BS when you've got the talent. We saw this with Aaron Rodgers. It's worth the headache. It's worth the BS. It's worth telling him, do whatever the hell you want behind the scenes. Do whatever the hell you want at the line of scrimmage when he's a 4-time MVP with the Green Bay Packers. Eventually, it wasn't worth it anymore for Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur. You lose to the Detroit Lions at Lambeau Field. He's not willing to work with these young players. They move on. In retrospect, even a year too late, you could have gotten a few draft picks there. You're willing to tolerate a hell of a lot in this dog-eat-dog cutthroat business when your quarterback is throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and 4 touchdowns. And don't throw stats at me with Shedeur Sanders. I mean, if it was all about stats, like we've said, I mean, the Timmy Changs of the world would be number 1 overall. Graham Harrell. the stats don't tell the story. He was slow. Right? Didn't run a 40 for a reason. Didn't really inherit Deion's athleticism, speed, all that quick twitchiness. So, that's working again. Doesn't really have that strong of an arm. Doesn't have that one exceptional physical trait. If you do like the improvisational ability, I mean, you heard Joe Klatt compare him to Fran Tarkington. If you do love that ability to just think on his feet and create when things break down, when it's not perfect, David Yost got into that as well. Maybe you talk yourself into Shedeur Sanders. And I think if he would have shown a little more humility, if he would have gone into these meetings without that sense of entitlement, and if you're not terrified of the Deion Sanders effect, probably does go in the second round, right? The scouts told Bob McGinn they viewed him as a first, second round prospect. Uh, but all that other stuff matters. It just does. You don't want to deal with that baggage with a backup quarterback because what's going to happen? Deion's going to work those sources that he has in the media. He's been everywhere. NFL Network, I'm sorry, Barstool, ESPN. I mean, he knows everybody, and everybody loves Deion. There's a reason that his son was talked about so glowingly for weeks and months up to this draft. So, do you really want to deal with all of that if the other quarterback's struggling? You don't want to play Shedeur yet, but you've got everybody 24/7, 365 saying you've got to bench that quarterback for Shedeur, and God forbid you play Shedeur and he plays poorly and you bench him, and what that discourse is like. That stuff matters at this position. So the more you really think about why Shedeur Sanders fell to the fifth round, the more it really does make a lot of sense. And now we'll see if he's humbled. Uh, this is the challenge of his life. Dylan Gabriel, Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Deshaun Watson still kicking around in that quarterback room. If he can rise above that, become the starter, he's got a chance to author the story of his own career. So, long-winded way of saying the Giants clearly were not ready to get into the Shedeur Sanders business. They like Pack. They love they loved going Abdul Carter number one because it's a no-brainer. And if you really think about it, you can hang on one second. Yeah. I had to double check this. They did start the entire offseason with Tommy DeVito. Okay. Tommy Salami. Made a run at Matthew Stafford, as one should, as one does. Uh, Maybe it was a little rope a dope by Stafford's camp to see if they can get a little money out of the Rams. It's kind of like they're playing chicken a little bit. Maybe he was never going to leave the LA Rams. Maybe it was never even a consideration. But if you're the New York Giants, you at least have to strongly consider all things Matthew Stafford. Get it. Aaron Rodgers, I guess he was a possibility. And kudos to the Giants for not wanting to play on Aaron Rodgers' time frame. I guess he's just going to tell the Steelers whether or not he wants to play at some point. And you have to do something. And you have to add multiple quarterbacks. So Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, but you need a quarterback. They like Jackson Dart. They're familiar with Jackson Dart. A lot of it is the projection of what he can become. I mean, the offense, we all saw the clip with John Gruden. He's not even reeling off a cadence at the line of scrimmage. He's clapping once. He's clapping two times. There's a lot of raw elements to his game in that Lane Kiffin offense that they're going to have to work through, but he can realistically be developed. And this is why you hired Brian Dable in the first place. This is why you hired Joe Shane in the first place. It's how they handled the quarterback position, how they recruited Josh Allen, seeing something in Josh Allen that a lot of people, even here in Western New York, could not see, and then developing him. It would be just the crime of the century for the New York Giants if you hire maybe the best teacher of the quarterback position, and that teacher of the quarterback position doesn't have an opportunity to mold his own. If Brian Dable loved Jackson Dart, and he sure as hell did, this was the best possible outcome for the New York Giants to get him at 26. You didn't really have to give up a lot in comparison to some of these other deals. And he doesn't have to start week one. You've got two veterans there to kind of ease him in. Now, what is the realistic expectation for the Giants. I was just looking at their over under in Vegas, and we got some comments here. By the way, yeah, the Giants their over under. I think it's at 5.5. I'd take the over, but I did last year as well. Okay, the Copernican Shift asks, "Hi Tyler, for your possible consideration later, since you described yourself as saying always searching for a long form story with your valuable time and a full coverage to your long form lens, I may have just what you are looking for." All right, sounds good. We're always wide open to any ideas that you have, and have a lot in store. Yes, I do like the Giants. I think they've got something cooking. And then you look in their division, and what do you see? The Philadelphia Eagles doing Philadelphia Eagles things. Howie Roseman somehow gets the best inside linebacker in the class because there's obviously concerns with Campbell, Jihad Campbell, but you still get him at the end of the first round. That's a steal. You know, this is what the Eagles do. They're returning their core. They gave Saquon Barkley money. I think that sent a great message in the locker room. They're going to be loaded up again. You've got the Dallas Cowboys. They actually draft pretty well for as much as we love to criticize all things Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones and their bottom of the barrel free agency fishing. I mean, they never spend money when they should spend money. When you've got a championship window, they actually draft pretty well. And to get Booker, just an old school guard, that's good for them. They're not going anywhere. I mean, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, it's not like they're going to be this 3 or 4 win team. And then obviously the Washington Commanders. They're running back. They get an offensive tackle. Jane Daniels in year 2. They made the move for Deebo Samuel. They've got maybe the best young quarterback in the sport to build around. So they'll be a Super Bowl contender as well. It's going to be tough for the Giants. What is that realistic expectation? 7-10, 8-9. You get to that point, you see a little something in Jackson Dart. I think you can justify building this thing out and really letting this regime keep this going into 2026. And I think more than anything, too, what I really love about the New York Giants and what they did in this draft, they just got some nasty, nasty SOBs. Like, they're seeking a temperament. I think a lot of the stuff that Brian Dable talks about can finally come to life with the personnel that they're drafting with. You know, a couple of years ago, they did joint practices. Oh, man, might have been with the Lions. I can't quite remember, but they got pushed around. You know, you're still kind of working through Gettleman's mistakes, trying to figure out who to keep, who to let go. Let's face it, some of these draft picks have not worked out. Evan Neal getting the dreaded kicked inside the guard treatment. Kayvon Thibodeau, you probably want to see more out of him. Deontay Banks, obviously. So the first 2 drafts leave a little to be desired. And they weren't ready to be a bully. They weren't ready to push people around. I think that these last 2 drafts kind of get the Giants to a place where maybe they can be the team that's setting a physical tone. I mean, this is a fiery coach, old school in a lot of ways. He is going to ride your ass, stay on you. But that's also what players love about him. He's real. He's raw. He develops genuine relationships with his players. So they're cool with him just ripping them to shreds because they know it comes from a good place. But you need to kind of draft a certain type of player for that. Somebody who can accept and embrace that kind of coaching. This draft class, at least if you look into what the scouts say about these guys, it's that in spades. I mean, Abdul Carter, a menace, screaming off the edge. Not only does he have all the talent in the world, he wants to rip your face off. Jackson Dart as a quarterback, emotions on his sleeve. The personalities between Dable and Daniel Jones never match. We've gotten into that. 2 very, very different personalities there. You know that Dable wanted to nail the personality aspect of this when he's kind of working through his own equation for the type of quarterback that he wants, you know, to save his job and to win games with. Darius Alexander, D tackle out of Toledo, wired the same way. Man, if you hit on that, that is an unbelievable value. It's 65 overall. And then there's our favorite player. Go Long's favorite player in the entire draft, Cam Scatterbo. Man, was he fun to watch in college. You pair him with Tyrone Tracy. He's running into light poles, right? I forget the stories. You can tell me anything about Cam Scatterbo, I'd probably believe it. Just tell me he did anything whatsoever. He's living in the woods on puddle water and insects. I'd probably believe it. He is that kind of player. So you stack that draft on top of Malik Neighbors. Joe Shane told us that he saw Steve Smith and Malik Neighbors, Stephon Diggs and Malik Neighbors, somebody that wants to rip your throat out. And he's talented with Tyler Nubin, with Drew Phillips, with Theo Johnson, with Tyrone Tracy. Now you've got something building. Now it's just a matter of how in the hell do you compete with the Cowboys, the Commanders, the Eagles. It's not going to be easy, but there's a reason that we believed in the New York Giants here for a while. The right people are finally in charge. They had to think outside of the box, right? Get outside of that network. Ownership was willing to do that to their credit, and they're doing the right thing seeing this through. All right. Thanks so much for hanging out here on a quick Substack Live. Always appreciated. Subscribe, golongtd.com for all features, columns, podcasts. We'll catch you next time.